Hi folks, welcome to today's video, and this video corresponds with notes 2.1. So this is our first set of notes for Unit 2, and we are going to be talking about amending the Constitution and how it changes, or how we can change the Constitution. So when we think about our objectives for today, I want you guys to think about how can you summarize the formal amendment process and the informal ways the Constitution can be changed. So we're going to talk about those methods throughout these notes. So first of all, what is an amendment? An amendment is a formal or official change made to a law, a contract, a constitution, or other legal document. And these amendments can add, remove, or update parts of these agreements. And part of the reason why our founders put this process into place was because that they knew our world was going to change. They had that forethought, right? They knew like the world isn't going to be like it is right now forever. Things are going to change. We're going to need to have to update this Constitution at some point. Let's make a process for that. And the amendment process is really what makes our Constitution a living document, one that has stayed with us for over 200 years. Now, over time, the way that we've amended our governing documents is different. So under the Articles of Confederation, if you remember, it was very difficult to amend and change that document. It required a unanimous vote by all 13 states, and just a single disagreement by a senator or representative would cause that amendment to fail. So what we saw was hardly anything getting done when it came to amending or changing the Articles of Confederation. Like I said, it made it almost impossible to get any amendments passed. Now, under the Constitution, I don't want to say it moved from very difficult to very easy. That's not the case. But what the founders did was make the process more manageable. So Article 5 was written in the Constitution to make sure that changing the Constitution is not too hard, but not too easy either. So it's kind of like the Goldilocks, right? Not too hot, not too cold. It's just right. Yep. We can still have some amendments made. However, the ones that are made are actually applicable to the entire country. They're the important ones. Now, there is a formal amendment process. This is the only way that you can directly change the Constitution. And there are two methods for this. And method one is the most common of the two. What this does, every amendment has to be proposed or introduced. And in method one, the amendment is proposed with a 2/3 vote from both houses of Congress. So that means both the House and the Senate have to agree, or 2/3 of those groups have to agree to introduce or propose the amendment. The amendment is then sent to the states to be ratified and approved. If 3/4 of the state legislatures ratify the amendment, it becomes part of the Constitution. So you're going to start to see a pattern here when we talk about these formal amendment process methods. It's always going to be 2/3 to propose, 3/4 to ratify. Okay. So again, method one, 2/3 of Congress has to propose, 3/4 of the state legislatures to ratify. Now, method number two has only been used once, and it was only used once to ratify the 21st Amendment. So this one is definitely not as common, but I did want to share it with you. Okay, again, it has to be 2/3 to be proposed, but instead of by Congress, the amendment might be proposed by a national convention called by state legislatures. But again, see that it's still that 2/3 number. The amendment would then be sent to special state conventions to be ratified or approved. And then just like in the other method, 3/4 for ratification, but instead of the state legislatures, it would be 3/4 of special state conventions ratify the amendment. Like I said, this was only used once to ratify the 21st Amendment. It really doesn't happen all too often. Now, I want you guys to pause the video here and I want you to reflect on this question, write your response, and then when you're ready to move on, press play. But I want you to think about approximately 11,000 amendments have been proposed since the Constitution was ratified in 1789. However, only 27 amendments have actually been approved and ratified. So my question for you is, why do you think so few proposals have actually become constitutional amendments? So pause the video, respond, and resume when you're ready. Now, the Constitution can also be informally changed. And when I say that, that's really any way other than that formal method that we looked at before. And one of those ways, or I guess I should say all of these ways, are usually brought about by historical and social change. There's usually something going on in the country that requires some sort of change. I'm going to start with the Supreme Court because the Constitution can be changed through decisions that the Supreme Court makes. The Supreme Court hears cases where there is a question about the constitutionality of a law. Does it violate the Constitution or not? We call this judicial review. And the reason that we have this is because the Constitution can't cover every single situation. It's already a long document, right? It's impossible to be able to tell everything and to predict the future. So what justices have to do is interpret the document and apply those interpretations to laws. These decisions then provide guidance on how future laws are addressed. So, for example, I have two court cases here, Plessy versus Ferguson and Brown versus Board of Education. You may have heard of these. So, in our example, we're going to start with Plessy. Plessy versus Ferguson is that Supreme Court case from the 30s, actually earlier, sorry, it's like late 1800s, I believe. But they are going to say that separate but equal is constitutional. So this is going to be the case that is going to legalize racial segregation. So as long as you have separate facilities, as long as they are equal, that is constitutional. Now, over time, this decision was challenged again in the Supreme Court when it came to education, right? It became pretty clear that school and education and buildings were not equal for students of different races. So the Supreme Court interpreted the Constitution. They changed the meaning of the Constitution to say separate but equal is not constitutional in Brown versus Board of Education. And this is the case that desegregates or makes that illegal. The Constitution can also be changed informally through federal law. And this is when Congress makes new laws and builds on the framework of the Constitution, right? The Constitution simply outlines the structure of our government. It's really up to Congress to kind of fill in the blanks. So these federal laws give additional directions, details to that original framework of the Constitution. So, for example, legislation like the Civil Rights and Voting Acts provide guidelines on how protections in the Constitution should be accomplished, right? The Constitution has limited government in it, right? It prevents the government from doing things. Certain amendments prohibit people from being discriminated against. These laws that Congress makes provide guidelines as to how that should be accomplished. And then aside from federal law and Supreme Court decisions, the Constitution can also be changed through other informal practices. And we'll kind of talk about these when we get into our next unit. But the legislative branch conducts what we call legislative oversight of the executive branch. And really, this is to keep the executive branch and all of its agencies and departments in line. It's like a check on the executive branch. So like I said, we will go into that more, but just know that this is a way that we can change the Constitution as well. Okay, so remember your objectives for this video were to summarize the formal amendment process and the informal ways that the Constitution can be changed. I have adjusted the way that we do questions at the end of the video. So what you're going to do now is answer a set of multiple choice questions. When you're finished, you will record your score on your note sheet. And then even if you get them all right, I want you to go back and look at your answers and record the correct answers in the boxes on your note sheet. So that way you have them as a reference. Okay, so if you need help with this process, send me an email or ask me in class, and I will talk to you guys soon. See you later.